Welcome to the video. My name is Randy Clements. In this video I'm going to demonstrate how you can easily migrate your database library in Altium to Altium 365 managed components. After you've installed a database library, here I've installed a database library that you can download from the internet and play with it yourself if you like. You can find it over at PCBpartsblogspot.com. Select the download tab over at PCBpartsblogspot.com and you can download either a 64-bit version or a 32-bit version. You want to check the version of Office you have installed, and if you have 64-bit Office installed, then you would download the 64-bit version. And also, please take a moment to look at permissions and access security notices. Anyway, after you've got it installed, then all you need to do is go up to the operations here, the little menu, and select Migrate Library. Also, we'll cover some best practices here, but I'll go ahead and kick this off, get it running, and do a little talking. I highly recommend that you select the Advanced tab rather than just jumping straight to Migrate and have a look around. In the Advanced tab, you can do a validate. So I would highly recommend you validate before you migrate. And scroll down and you can see that we have one warning here, and it's because I didn't assign a component type to this new part. And for this demonstration, I'm just going to go ahead and call that a new part. And we can run validate again, and you can see that we don't get any warnings. So we'll go ahead and migrate. It'll take about 40 seconds to migrate. This is about 24 parts, but roughly about 40 seconds. And while we're waiting for that, I'll point out that after you've downloaded parts, there's an optional parts front-end application that can be used to simplify maintaining a database library and give you very consistent results. For example, if we were to look at these resistors that are in this database, you can see they all have a nice consistent format, value, tolerance, wattage, package size. Same sort of thing for the capacitors. Very consistent descriptions. I'll sort those just so we can sort them by ceramic and electrolytic or whatever. And in this database, I chose to have a part type field that I could have a drop-down menu on, and that's dynamic. As you add parts to the database, the list grows. And you can have a subtype if you like. So, like in the case of capacitors, you might want to segregate those, organize them into ceramic, electrolytic, or film, or tantalum. Anyway, let's get back to our migration. We can see that the migration was finished, and we could open the log and look at that if we like. There's probably not much of interest there. Typically, you'd want to open a log and look at it if you had some failures, and you might want to read through the failures, but here you can see we just have success, success, success. And a big part of being successful in migration is to start out with a clean library. And that's where using a database library like this parts access turnkey library that you can download and use really will speed up the process of building up a clean library for you. Anyway, let's take a look at this migrated library. We can go to the All tab. And now we can see if we look down through here, we have the same parts with the same name. Here it's called name. In a database library, it's referred to as ID. Format looks very similar. The information that you can see, whether it's in Altium 365, is pretty much the same as the database library. We have supplier data, we have links, footprints. If we look back at the database library one more time, we pick that same part. You see pretty much the same sort of information. Somewhere here, you can pull this down. to find these dividers a little bit sometimes. Shrink that down a little bit. Anyway, basically the same sort of information. We have the supplier links again, database. You can jump to the supplier details from there, or you can pull up a data sheet. So whether you're using a database library or there, we get stock information. And that's, again, if the database has been designed like this database here. Again, you can download that and get a free copy of that to work with. This parts front end is optional. It's not required, but even this parts front end, you can work with it for up to 100 components or up to 30 days for free. You can do a lot with 100 components at a time. Anyway, if you've never seen just a raw database, it looks a lot like a spreadsheet. It's just records, rows of data, which are referred to as records, and then you have fields, which would kind of be the equivalent of parameters or columns in Excel, but parameters in Altium. Anyway, having a parts front end like this can simplify library maintenance. Let's take an example, take a quick look at that. If we were to go into, let's say we needed another inductor, I might sort by inductors, and maybe it's another 0402. I've got 3 of them here. I want to make another inductor because I already have an inductor symbol and I have my footprints for the inductor. I would choose just to make like another one or clone it. But what I'll do here is I'll copy this part number and I'll jump out to octopart, and I didn't really need to copy that because the link octopart, I was past this data to octopart when I went out there. I went by the part number and did a search. So we can change that, for example, to like 3.6 nanohenries, and take a look around. We've got some over here at DigiKey. And once we've found the part that we want to use, it's another 0402, same symbol. We can just select Make Like, reuse the same symbol and footprint, and then drag and drop the DigiKey header into the black hat and the parts front end, and we've just created another part. So you can see that's 30,025. So if we were to go back and look in the database library, for example, and do a refresh in the panel, you should see that new 3.6 nanohenry inductor that we just made. So it really is that easy to make another part. And also in this download library, I have 2 inductors, 2 resistors, 2 capacitors. I have a smaller size part, and then I have a larger size part. The smaller parts can be handy when you're in situations where your wiring is a little bit tight. And other times, for better visibility on a size B schematic, you might want to use a little bit larger part. Anyway, in the properties panel, if you're not familiar with having alternate normal parts, you can always take a look at how I put the symbol together, but here's the normal version, and you can see that's a little bit larger. Okay. One of the other things I'd emphasize is notice how all these parts are consistently sized. So that means that we can easily swap parts. You know, like if this resistor was swapped in, there'd be no wiring needed because it's the same size. We could even swap a capacitor in there with no wiring. But for example, we can see this 1K ohm resistor here is like 30,011 was its ID. So we can also just very quickly and easily change the ID number. Okay, and you could do similar things in Altium's. Also, here I'll take this one and make it 30,009. And sending it back to a 10K. But anyway, that can be really valuable when you have several schematic sheets, because you can use find similar, find all the 10K ohm resistors on the design, and change them all at one time. Okay, so let's take a look at that migrated data. That's what we really came here to look at anyway. But you'll see again the data looks very familiar, so let's have a look at that. We can place a 10K ohm resistor here, and we'll notice again that this is very consistent size because it started from the database library. So whether it was migrated parts or whether it was the database parts, they're all consistent in size. Now let's say what it would take to swap to the 1K ohm library part. Well, we could select this, and then we could search for our 1K ohm part. We've got one here. Select OK. Now we're at 1K. Okay, so unlike I was swapping before with the just putting the number in here, you can see this is grayed out. So we cannot just put a number in there when we're using the Altium 365 managed components. That's maybe one area that the database takes a little advantage on. Still both are very user-friendly. And the advantage of the Altium 365 managed components is it's easier to collaborate. If you have users in remote locations and you put your library up there, they can all pull from that same library. One thing you might keep in mind, though, is while getting parts into the Altium managed component was pretty easy from a database library. If you ever need to get all those parts back out of that database, you'll find that can be quite troublesome and quite a bit of work. And for that reason, some people prefer to keep their parts in a database library because they can have better ownership of that library. They can upgrade from Access to MySQL. You can put a MySQL database on Amazon Web Services and collaborate from there. For example, if you would like to try to collaborate from Amazon Web Services, that can easily be done. I'll just show you an example of that. A second to open the parts front end again. Parts front end, by the way, has a dark theme and a light theme both. But anyway, here I'm going to load, you can load multiple configurations. I'm going to load an Amazon Web Services scheme. So here you can see the drivers, MySQL. This is a database string connection, string to the database. And this server is hosted on US West RDS Amazon Web Services. So this particular group that I'm working with, the engineers are pretty spread out. Some are in Canada, some are in Southern California. But anyway, using a database like this, they're able to collaborate in real time, and that works very well. The footprints and symbols were kept in a Git repository, and the parametric data was hosted on Amazon Web Services. Anyway, if you're interested in that, you can always contact me, and I'd be happy to show you more about all the options for creating libraries, all the way from using managed Altium's managed 365 components up through Access databases, MySQL databases, whether you want local databases on your company network drive or whether you would like to have them on Amazon Web Services or some other website in the cloud. All those things can be done. The cloud services are best for long-range remote collaboration. You can also put databases on company network servers, and users can use a VPN connections, mount the company drives, and collaborate from those also. So anyway, there's several options, but this Altium 365 is a pretty good option if you're not too concerned about having your library kind of locked up, if you will, in Altium's cloud space. Because while you can download out of there, you're just downloading, for example, we're downloading this, and if we look at that zip file that we just downloaded, you would find out that you haven't downloaded the library. What you in fact have downloaded is one part. So you're kind of in a situation where you're going to have to download each part one at a time until you get them all back out of there. I'm not seeing it right here now, but anyway, You can play with that yourself. You'll see that when you download these and pull them out, that I just needed to pick a place. I didn't realize where I put it. It was in the public documents, and I was having trouble finding it. This time, let's say I'll throw it out onto the desktop. And then if we look out onto our desktop real quick, we should be able to see that component. And you can see that we've got it right here, the footprint and the symbol. And if we were to open that and look at it, we'll just try the PCB lib. Can't extract that yet, so let's try to extract all that first. So anyway, after you've extracted it, you should be able to open it. And you can see that we've got the two footprints that I had originally in the database library. So we've got the parts, for the resistor symbol, and then if we looked at the schematic symbol, we'd see the same sort of thing, that we have the component here. It has the parametric data in it now. Again, we've just downloaded one symbol. And there's the comment represents reflecting the original database part. So that would be the same as our 30,009 here. In fact, it would be pretty easy to go back and forth between these libraries if you had to. So let's take a look at that. For example, if we were to place, let's say, this resistor here, this 10K ohm resistor, from the managed components, we can see it's out of the Altium library. Again, you can't modify this manually here, but you can go search down another part and go from it there. So let's go ahead and change that to 30,011. Anyway, but let's say now that we have 30,011 here, and we know that's where it's from, and we'd like to change that to the database library for some reason. Well, we can just select our source to our parts demo database library. We'd select clean, and we can surf again to that part, or we could have just put in the number. Either way, okay, we could have put in the number, because we can always enter the number if you know the number you're looking for. So anyway, it's pretty easy to go back and forth. Again, it's pretty easy to migrate. The key is to having clean and consistent data, and that's where the parts front end can really come in to be very helpful, because it produces very efficient, very quickly, consistent data. For example, here, just looking at these 0402 resistors that are in this library that's stored on the Amazon cloud surfaces, you can see there's 377 resistors in that library. And if we were to look at just the 0402 capacitors, there's 208. Anyway, thanks for taking a look at the video, and if you're interested in learning more about using parts or need help with migrating libraries, you can always reach me over at PCBpartsblogspot.com. Over there's a contact parts tab. You can just click on that tab, drop your email address in there, and you can reach out to me, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you. Have a great day. Thanks for watching the video.